Welcome back to International Star Media, the Gold Star Standard at the Gold Star Standard. Reactions, reviews, and news you can use. Once again, I am your host, International Yada, for the record saying the dollars. And check this out. The X industry, y'all know what I'm talking about. The X industry, recruiting and accepting the earnings of a prostitute. This time we're back in Michigan, West Michigan to be exact, Grand Rapids. Here we go. We jumping straight off into this. Check out this news story.
First at 4, efforts to fight sex trafficking in Grand Rapids have snagged another alleged offender. A 24-year-old woman is charged with accepting earnings from prostitution and using a computer to commit a crime. Targeted investigator Susan Samples is here to talk about how we discovered this case. Susan?
Well, this came to us because we were doing a routine check of court dockets. That's what the assignment desk here at Wood TV does, looking for cases that sort of illustrate a societal problem and what we're doing to fight it. So in this case, we went and pulled the court records on this. This started as a Grand Rapids police undercover investigation, the Vice Unit, back in September of 2024, actually. It took a little while to build this case. They were targeting online prostitution, set up a meeting in a hotel parking lot near downtown Grand Rapids. The woman showed up, got in what she thought was the date's car, turned out to be an undercover officer. And this is really illustrative of how the sex industry is operating now, because, you know, years ago it was on the street corner. Now it's online, it's behind closed doors. And what we're going to hear about coming up at 5 and 6 is more detail about how this woman, who was supposed to be performing this date, got into this in the first place. And we're going to share what she had to say about it, and also why she's not charged in this case. The person who's charged is a woman who was profiting from it, who was receiving the earnings from prostitution. And that woman was the one that was setting up the dates, doing the advertisement. And she had recruited this woman into the industry. So now, like I was just talking to Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker, and he was saying if there's an element of trafficking, they're not charging the person who was there to, you know, have the date. They're charging the person who is profiting from it.
Wow.
So
You heard it right there. They are not charging the person who is there for the date. They are charging the person who's profiting from it. Okay? All right, let's get straight off into this. Grand Rapids, Michigan woman accused of recruiting for X trade faces felony charges. Here we go. Grand Rapids, Michigan, an agency that works to combat human trafficking in Kent County, weighed in on the case against a woman accused of recruiting for the X trade. 24-year-old woman, they said. 24, here we go. Safe Haven Ministries said people targeted by traffickers are often vulnerable with few resources. I notice it's not just local, state, and federal officers that's being involved in these undercover operations that's going on all across the United States, but it's also advocacy groups or advocate groups that are aligned with these people. Like they say right here, Safe Haven Ministries. On a lot of these cases, they have advocacy groups that are also aligned with the local, state, and federal officers. Y'all pay attention out there. Here we go. This is a very common situation where someone might start something of their own free will, said Amanda Colgrove of Safe Haven Ministries in Grand Rapids. Maybe they're in a desperate situation. They need money. They don't have access to a job that can support them or their family. And then someone comes along and says, hey, I just want to help you out. We can do this together. That's what they say. According to court records, that's exactly what happened when a woman approached a young mother of 2, offering to help her out. Now the alleged recruiter, who's 24 and has an address in Reed City, is charged with receiving earnings from a prostitute. and using a computer to commit a crime. They said she was accepting the earnings of a prostitute, and as you will see, she is now facing 20 years in prison. Both are felonies that carry up to 20 years in prison, though sentencing guidelines would likely call for much less time because the woman does not appear to have a prior criminal record. So they saying she might face a lot less than the maximum sentence on this because she has no prior criminal record. A 24-year-old woman being charged for accepting the earnings of a prostitute. Here we go. It was officers with the Grand Rapids Police Department who identified the potential trafficking situation during a 2024 undercover sting targeting online prostitution.
He's on the ground!
In September of 2024, a Grand Rapids Police Department detective responded to an online advertisement and agreed to meet a sex worker in the parking lot of a hotel near downtown Grand Rapids. Once at the location, the ex-worker called the GRPD undercover detective and then got in his vehicle, wrote a detective in a probable cause affidavit filed in the 61st District Court. Moments later, the vehicle was pulled over. The sex worker stated that she was not the one communicating with detectives to make the arrangements for the meeting, wrote the investigator in the court record. She further states that a man and woman had introduced her to this activity and stated that they would help her out if she took part in the activity. Now they have introduced a man into it. This situation with this 24-year-old woman that has been charged with accepting the earnings of a prostitute. Here we go. Analysis of cell phones later confirmed the woman's story. Multiple times in the conversations, the recruiter told the ex-worker that they have multiple plays for her, referring to sexual encounters for money, wrote a detective in the affidavit. The agreement of 50-50 is also mentioned frequently. So I'm assuming that this so-called man that they said was involved and this 24-year-old told the woman that they would split their earnings 50-50. I want to say everything is not for everybody, okay? A lot of you need to find something legal to do. That's what you need to do. Find something legal to do. That's my suggestion. Here we go. The ex-worker told investigators she and the people who recruited her were supposed to split the profits 50-50. They said that was the deal that was made. A 50-50 deal. Here we go. Then everything seems like it's consensual, said Cole Grove of Safe Haven Ministries. But once they're in it, the person who is offering to help them turns the tables. And now they're stuck. They're trapped. They're being forced to do it. They're being threatened with all kinds of things. It could be threats of harm of them and their family. It could also be threats of their reputation. And in this case that we're talking about here, I don't think that the so-called victim ever mentioned that she was being forced. But we are dealing with the crime that they call trafficking and or human trafficking. And once again, the elements that are needed to find you guilty in this case are force, fraud, coercion, violence, and or the threats of violence, or what they call fear. So that's force, fraud, coercion, or fear. Found guilty of any of those elements, it's possible that you too can face up to 20 years in prison. Take heed. Here we go. That's what he did in this case. The recruiter 24 is scheduled for a hearing in 61st District Court in downtown Grand Rapids Thursday morning.
Top here at 6, a Michigan woman accused of recruiting a young mother into the sex industry is charged with 2 felonies. The 24-year-old suspect, who has an address in Reed City, is charged with receiving earnings from prostitution and using a computer to commit a crime. Target 8 investigator Susan Samples reports the investigation started with Grand Rapids Police, who then turned it over to the Kent County Human Trafficking Task Force out of the Sheriff's Office.
You might not see it out in the open anymore. It's been years since sex workers advertised on Grand Rapids street corners. This trade has gone online and indoors. Still, the sex industry is thriving and no neighborhood is immune. This case started with a 2024 undercover sting conducted by the Grand Rapids Police Vice Unit targeting online prostitution. According to court records, a Vice officer set up a date through an online advertisement and met the sex worker here in the parking lot of a hotel near downtown Grand Rapids. She got in his car and a patrol car pulled them over. The woman, a young mother of 2, told detectives she had been recruited by another woman who did all the advertising and scheduling and promised to split the profits 50-50.
This is a very common situation where someone might start something out of their own free will, or maybe they're in a desperate situation. They need money, they don't have access to a job that can, support them or their family, and then someone comes along and says, hey, I just want to help you out. Like, we can do this together. And then once they're in it, the person who was offering to help turns the tables, and now they're stuck, they're trapped, they're being forced to do it, they're being threatened with all kinds of things. It could be threats of harm to them or their family. It could be threats to their reputation.
The case was identified by GRPD, but developed by sheriff's detectives from the Kent County Human Trafficking Task Force. Last year, the task force identified 73 trafficking victims and arrested 21 offenders. That's compared to 2024, when they identified 40 victims and arrested 13 offenders. The 24-year-old woman who allegedly recruited the sex worker, posted the advertisements, and set up the dates is facing 2 felonies. If convicted, she could get up to 20 years in prison, though it's likely sentencing guidelines would call for much less because it appears she does not have a criminal history.
If convicted, she could face up to 20 years in prison. Take heed. All right, let's look at this. Harsher punishments. That's what they say is coming to the state of Michigan for this crime. They said they are looking to implement harsher punishment, and this effort has been going on for a few years. Check it out.
The package of bills aims to support survivors, and advocates say it's a good start. In 2024, the National Human Trafficking Hotline received 764 tips originating in Michigan. Of those, 340 cases were confirmed instances of human trafficking. Cases can range from sexual exploitation to forced labor.
It is unbelievable what's happening right beneath our very noses.
Human trafficking has also evolved, increasingly moving online, with sextortion becoming a new danger.
You don't often see the signs of this. You see when a store's been broken into, you see the broken window, you see cars abandoned on the road, you see drug deals going on. This is not the proverbial white truck pulling up at a big box store and kidnapping somebody, even though that does happen.
Attorney General Dana Nessel has been pushing for action on human trafficking across multiple legislative sessions.
We need better laws to address it.
And this time, she got bipartisan support, with legislation adding more tools to the arsenal by sentencing those who traffic children and those who kidnap, sexually abuse victims, or kill them to life in prison. Each of those offenses would also bring a $50,000 fine. All other trafficking violations could land offenders up to 20 years in prison and a $20,000 fine. The package would also help underage survivors involved in prostitution because of trafficking by raising the minimum age someone can be charged for prostitution to 18, while allowing first-time offenders to be placed on probation and participate in a human trafficking awareness program.
Y'all see what's going on right there. A lot of these states, including Michigan, are adopting the federal guidelines in these state cases regarding human trafficking and or ex-trafficking. If you get caught dealing with a minor, they are looking to give you life in prison. Mandatory life in prison. Take heed. Leave those children alone. Okay? International Star Media, the Gold Star Standard, at the Gold Star Standard. Reactions, reviews, and news you can use. Once again, I am your host, International Yada, for the records and the dollars. And we will see you on the next one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share this video.